Hello and welcome to another video. Today, as you can see from the title, we're going to talk about, once again, on Ancient Gears. And Ancient Gears, with now also Legendary Duelist Season 2, are going to get far more accessible to the public. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to be absolutely cheap, but now you can get them for more reasonable price. And for anybody who don't know, the goal of Ancient Gears is pretty simple. Trying to bait up your opponent negations, bring out a big boy, and essentially attack them and OTK them with said big boy that can attack all monsters, which I'm talking about Chaos Giant. That's pretty much the deck gist for the most part. But before we'll jump right into the video, I'm going to remind you the usual thing that the subscriber a day keep the depression away, so if you want to help the channel, you love these kind of videos, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It can really mean a lot to me. Seeing the numbers grow really makes me want to make better videos and essentially works on things. And, you know, you can get videos immediately as I'm bringing it out, obviously. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into the list itself. Alright, so now let's get started with the list. And we're going to start things off with the Ancient Gear lineup itself. And we're going to start things off with triple copies of Wyvern, obviously. Followed up by 2 copies of Hound, 2 copies of Gear Frame, 1 copy of Box, and then followed up by the 2 copies of Reactor Dragon, and then the 1 copy of Golem. This is the lineup of Ancient Gears that I decided to run. I don't think you need any more, because Ancient Gears themselves are kind of bricks, let's be honest. I like these guards quite a bit, but there are some kind of like bricks, because they're not really able to special summon themselves really easily. Now, I do understand why people like them from the names, but we do have the ability to get enough names to essentially combo most of the time. So running multiple, way too many of these is kind of, most of the time, not necessary. So I feel like this lineup is mostly fine. But let's get to explain what each of these cards do. So starting things off, we're going to start off with Wyvern. Wyvern is basically your Stratos of the archetype. It search any Ancient Gear card, but it's kind of like, for some reason, also lock you to not setting any cards for the turn, which is a weird effect, I guess, but it is what it is. It mostly doesn't matter, but it's a weird effect. Then you have Hound. Hound is your fusion summon without a fusion spell. You normal summon this, it's basically dealing 600 damage to your opponent, but mostly, like I said, it's basically your fusion spell, additional fusion spell, without actually having a fusion spell, which is really good because sometimes you want to summon this out of your deck after you got all of your searches and anything, and essentially it's a better special summoning out of your deck, beside, searching Ancient Gear Fusion and all that stuff, because it's just giving you additional names, that's why Hunting Hound is pretty good. Then we have Gear Frame. Gear Frame is the worst searcher out of the two, because Gear Frame specifically can only search Ancient Gear Golem, or cards that specifically list Ancient Gear Golems, which are spells and traps. So either this one, or Ancient Gear Fusion. But the problem is, it's also requiring you to discard a card for its effect. Its secondary effect, however, doesn't really matter. Then, the last kind of searcher, or from the smaller guys, is Ancient Gear Box. Box is your weird searcher. If it's get it added to your hand except by drawing it, it's allowing you to add any Earth machine that is either have 500 attack or 500 defense from your deck to your hand, which is not it. So you can add either Gear Frame, or you can add 2 of your infinite track targets to your hand. So essentially, you have the ability to add multiple cards to your hand, which making Ancient Gear Box really good. And then we have Ancient Gear, Reactor Dragon, and Golem. Honestly, these are just boss monsters. Reactor Dragon is definitely better because it have the ability to pop spells and traps on attacking, which is really cool. And also, most of the Ancient Gear Golem mandatory boss monsters kind of stop your opponent from activating anything. So that's also really nice. So if they have kind of a battle trap, they attack, he attacks, he destroys, and then essentially you can attack again with anything without any fear, if you fear of some particular weird back row. I guess mostly today metagame it doesn't really matter, but for the off chance that it does matter, so that's really nice for that. And secondly, it is summonable with no any stupid restrictions, just like Gear Golem, which is saying you cannot special summon this card, which is absolutely dumb. And that's why you only run 1. There are some people, like I said, like to run multiple copies of this, because of the fact that they are focusing more of the Ancient Gear Golem aspect. But I think focusing on the Ancient Gear Golem aspect is honestly quite worse. I don't think it's really that good. So, for the most part, I think this is just enough. But that's pretty much does it for the Ancient Gear cards. We'll move on to the rest of the Earth Machine support. And for the rest of the Earth Machine support, we're running 3 copies of Bullet Train, 2 copies of Derek Crane, 2 copies of Metal Cruncher, 2 copies of Uncle Drill, and then the 1 copy of Trencher. Now, for these 5 specifically, which I also decided to bump this up to 3 from the last list, these guys are just your free special summoners, which are really easy to summon. Derek Crane is definitely a card that I considered to run at 3, but I didn't really find the space because of one reason, which I'll explain later. This guy is basically really good. It's chain blocks. You summon an Earth Machine, you get it out of your hand. It's really nice. Bullet Train, however, is a little bit better because Bullet Train is a free special summon all the time. As long as you control only Earth Machines. So that's really good for most of the time in part of combos, because sometimes you want this to be summoned later, so that's the point of that, which is really cool. Then you have Mellow Cruncher. Mellow Cruncher is honestly here because it's like an additional searcher for the most part. It doesn't really do anything else beside that. It's like, it just, you normal summon this, which is really cool. It's a level 9, so it does come off with Calamity, so I shouldn't have said it does not do anything. But the point is, you normal summon this, it's another searcher, it search any of your monsters, as long as like your opponent chooses from the 3 of them to add that monster. But most of the time you either are a Bullet Train, or a Wyvern, or a box, or a gear frame, or whatever you need to essentially just continue your combos. And this guy proved up to be mostly kind of nice. Like 90% of the time he's actually really useful, so I like this card quite a bit. It is a little bit expensive from Eternity Code, but for the most part he's not a must off. So if you don't want this, you could run 2 additional cards that you think like could help your deck. But like I think like this one is really nice. You could run like a 3rd Derek Crane and then like another free special summoner that you think. But I think the Mellow Crunchers are kind of nice. And then for these 3, the Mini Infinitrack Engine, these got a lot cheaper, at least the Uncle Drills, recently, so that's kind of nice for anybody that haven't got them yet. Uncle Drill and Trencher basically are supposed to be like your... this is like supposed to be your free special summon from hand. Sometimes it can get ashed, or should I say not ashed, Effect Veiler or Impermed. But, it's not the worst thing in the world. Worst case scenario, it did. It's not really the worst. It's just an additional way to free special summon, so that's kind of nice. And then Trencher can get to tribute over things if you need to. Mostly, however, it's just like supposed to work with combination with this, and for the reason that we'll run Urgent Schedule. Like, he's specifically because you run this and this for Urgent Schedule. That's pretty much the reason for this guy. But that's pretty much does it for the monsters. Honestly, pretty straightforward in terms of the monsters. Now we'll move on into the spells. So for the spells themselves, we're running triple copies of Gear Town, 1 copy of Terraforming, triple copies of Catapult, and then the 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods. Honestly, this lineup mostly haven't changed except from cutting the 1 of the goods, because I'm just kind of thinking that Catapult is still a great card, but I don't think Catapult is like the main focus anymore. Catapult is great for like popping cards, and we do have more names for like, Catapult to like pop easier. Basically, like we have, I believe, like if you're counting these, kind of 9, which you will see why I'm saying that we have 9. But like you don't really have all the time for its first effect. However, I did decide to maybe cut this down to 1 and run 2 Foolish Burial Goods, but I most of the time like this one a little bit more because like it's also just a great bait to your opponent, and it's also like a way for you to like chain block, because like you could pop this, then it will be Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2, this will get negated, this will not get negated, and you get to summon any card that you want ignoring summoning condition, which is really cool. And then Gear Town, obviously, like I mentioned, it's get popped, you get the effect of like summoning an ancient gear from your hand, field, or graveyard, unfortunately, without the ignoring summoning condition part, which doesn't work with Golem. But for your rest of your other 10 ancient gears in the main deck, it actually works quite nicely. And then goods, because this sometimes you want the effect in the graveyard or rather than the hand, so that's pretty nice for that. Then for a card that I actually am a little bit shocked that I'm running 3 off, with the 2 ancient gear fusions, obviously, but the one that I'm talking about is 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress. Now, I'm going to jump on this into for a second, but Ancient Gear Fusion, finally I get my actual physical copies. It's just your fusion spell. If you have an Ancient Gear Golem, it's better. You don't really need the Ancient Gear Golem to make this combo work, but it is nice. So, it's definitely nice to have that option, so that's really cool. But mostly what you care about is this card. Like, this probably the one that raised the most questions, which is Ancient Gear Fortress. Now, why do I run 3 Ancient Gear Fortress? Well, because in this today format, hand traps and stuff like that, and any effect that can activate, like, going on you going first and everything, and like, you are going second deck, is basically just going to stop you and you're not going to be able to play. And some of your effects are really, really important for you to OTK your opponent. Now, it definitely doesn't allow you to use the effect of, what it called? Gear Town, so like, specifically Gear Town, like, if you're specifically, like, using Gear Town effect, your opponent can still negate that. But the rest of your Ancient Gear cards cannot be negated by your opponent as long as this is activated. And even if your opponent negate this activation and is getting destroyed, you are getting the ability to basically, still like, you bait your opponent, which is really important. Unfortunately, if it's getting destroyed, I don't think it can activate its effect, like, to special summon from hand or graveyard. I think it cannot, because it didn't really get activated into the spell and trap zone yet, because it didn't really resolve for the first part. I don't know, it's a weird thing in the ruling. So for the most part, like, you at least baited your opponent interruption, which is like really like the important interruption, so like your stuff can go off, or you're able to just like stop your opponent from stopping you. It's really that important in my opinion, and honestly, this card is fine. Like, I was considering cutting it down to 2 and run something else, but I think, like, Gear Town, or should I say Fortress, is actually really good because of this, like, little thing that just, like, stop your opponent from interrupting you. Some decks cannot really deal with that. Like, you put this, they cannot really throw on you their Effect Veilers, their Imperms, their Ash Blossoms. They cannot throw that because this will stop them, or they cannot negate your monster's effects because this will stop them. So I think this is really important, and you should give it a try. If you don't want to, you could run these, cut these by 2 and run 2 cards that you need. But this works really wonders for me, and I actually like this card quite a bit. So sacrificing, in my opinion, 1 card to, like, guarantee you actually doing your combo is actually really, really good. But that's pretty much does it for the Ancient Gear spells. Now we'll move on to the rest of the stuff. Then we're moving on to 2 copies of Heavy Forward, 3 copies of Urgent Schedule, and then the 1 copy of Overload Fusion. Heavy Forward and Urgent Schedule, basically additional 2 ways to either search or special summon and getting 2 engines going. This one, if your opponent negated, whatever, you still have other ways to do stuff, but mostly you want this to not get negated because it's one of the better ones. And Heavy Forward, same idea. It's a continuous spell, so it could be destroyed by a catapult, which is also really nice, but it's search your Infinitrack stuff, so that's really cool. But if your opponent negate this, like I said, it's not the end of the world. You definitely prefer them not to, but it's not the end of the world, so that's nice. And then Urgent Schedule, like I said, if your opponent controls more monsters, are really nice, and this card should be reprinted in the next upcoming Legendary Duelist Season 2, so for anybody who thinks that this is expensive, you should be able to get this for a more reasonable price. And then for this one, we only run the 1 copy because we do run Verte Anaconda, because Verte Anaconda allowing you to do this really, really easily. And if you don't open up, like you open up with this, you don't go Verte Anaconda, you just do something else with the monsters and you don't really need them that much. So yeah, that's pretty much does it for that. But that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Now we'll move on into the extra deck. And for the extra deck itself, I would say I'm still kind of like working on the extra deck because it's really, really hard for me. But for the most part, I think I found out like an extra deck that works for the most part. And we're going to start things off with the Ancient Gear stuff. And we're going to start things off with 2 Ancient Gear Giant, 1 Golem, or should I say Ultimate Golem, 1 Megaton, and 2 Hollitzer. These are really, really great lineup for Ancient Gears. Honestly, these 2 specifically are not that good. This one specifically not that good, but this one sometimes does come up. This one specifically not that good. So you could cut this down if you want to run something else. But for the rest of these, this one was the time like you only need the 1 singles for this one because you're trying to OTK your opponent. But I do like the multiples just in case. This one is like your entire OTK machine, can attack everything, does piercing damage unaffected by stuff, is really good. And this one is like mostly like you use this to summon Ancient Gear Fusion, you then send it to your graveyard with another monster, and essentially get 4 materials in the graveyard. That's pretty much its whole role. It can also burn your opponent to 1,000, so it's making things a little bit more easier for OTK. So that's really cool, because technically you need your opponent only to have like, I guess, 2 monsters to essentially just OTK them. So that's actually kind of stupid. Because this one can get over almost everything, so that's really, really dumb. And then these 2, like I said, they're mostly backup fusions, but you don't really need them that much. Then for the Xyz and your backup you know, OTK, I guess. We have 1 Juggernaut Lieb, 1 Dora, and 1 Gustav Max. As well, we're also running 1 Calamities and 1 Dweller for the other cards. For, like, you know, if you are forced going first, I guess these are not that bad. But why do I run this little package? Because I heard in the comments last time, people, like, told me that this is really not that necessary. Because of the fact that, you know, you do run the Agent Gear Fusion, like, or should I say Agent Gear engine anyway. So why do I need Lieb? Well, sometimes things are not going according to plan, right? You're not able to do everything you want to. You're not able to do everything you specifically desire to, like, you know, OTK your opponent, because sometimes your opponent is just going to stop you, and, yeah, you have no chance anyway. So this, essentially giving you the other backup plan. You just need to summon, like, you know, the, what are it called? The catapult, or should I say ballista, plus whatever you need. Like you 2 level 10s, you then make this, you burn your opponent, and then you just summon this, and then you attack on them for 6,000 for game. So that's really, really good for that lineup. And then Super Dora, also a card that you can cut, but sometimes you do need the rank 10 if you are going first to just make this and just sit on it. So that's really, really nice. And now for the links. For the links themselves, we're running 2 copies of Ballista, 1 copy of Verte Anaconda, and 1 copy of Goliath. This is, honestly, I feel like all the lineup of links you need. You are able, like I said, to cut some of the cards and run more links, but I think this is all you need. And I'll explain why. Goliath, once again, is a card I got, like, in the comments a little bit questions before, and I will explain why Goliath. Goliath is really good for the off chance that, like, your opponent kind of, like, stop you and you're not able to go into your, what are it called? I forgot the name for it again. Your ballista, right. It's right in front of me, I forgot his name. But the point is, like, sometimes your opponent can, like, stop you. Well, you do have at least, like, you have the Ankle Drill and the Trencher in your hand, but your opponent stop your Ankle Drill, so you're not able to play. So this is for the off chance that, like, you make the Ankle Drill into this, which I explained before. You then summon the Trencher on top of this, like, you know, do that. Or should I say, like, sorry, you tribute the Ankle Drill for the Trencher, you make this, then you banish the Trencher, summon the Ankle Drill, and then you make 2 of them to make into that, which is really good. And this one, search things, turn things into 0, pop cards, summon stuff, it's really good. And this one is obviously Overload Fusions, there's really no need to explain about that. But that's pretty much does it for the deck profile itself. Honestly, I think this deck is really, really fun and very straightforward what it needs to do. If you have any suggestions of how to improve the deck in the main deck or the extra deck, let me know in the comments down below. The deck itself kind of got figured out, I think, for the most part, but I think it's still really fun to just pick this mindless OTK deck sometimes and just, like, go face, basically. And almost nothing can stop you because you are able to play for multiple interruptions if you're playing against a deck that, like, in the same of your power level and not like a meta deck, obviously. But in deck in your same power level, you're basically able to crush anything because of the fact that, like, how should I say this? You have multiple ways to special summon 2 Earth Machines, and like I said, 2 Earth Machines, and that's enough for your OTK. So that's really important to note. But that's pretty much does it for that. Let's move on to the next deck choices. Alright, so for the next deck choice, well, there are 3 options that I'm kind of a lot more, you know, safe to say that I can do them really, really easily and have no problem with them. But there's a 4th option that I really, really want to do for a very long time, but I'm not really 100% sure I have everything I need, for 1, and B, I'm not really 100% sure of, like, you know, if it's going to work that well. So the problem is I need a little bit of testing with that. I can probably make it for next week, but it still needs a little bit of testing. So for the first 3 options, we have Predator Plants, Cyber Dragons, and Zombie World. 3 particular options for that. And then for the 4th option, I'm going to go with Light Swords. It's been a while since I made Light Swords, and I also have all the Chaos package and all that stuff, which is really cool. I'm just not really 100% sure how to build them right now because of some particular things that have changed. So Light Swords, I want to make them, but I'm still need a little bit of testing with them, so we'll see, but that will be the 4th option that I'm going to present to you. But that's pretty much does it for the video and does it for the deck profile itself. So hope you enjoyed. As usual, I'm going to remind you once again that if you enjoyed, please consider to hitting the like and subscribe because, you know, it helps the channel with analytics. And let me know what your thoughts in the comments down below. And, you know, Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.